Okay.
There's something to be said for being the only kind of game of a certain genre on a platform, because it means even if you're not really all that great, you can still be good enough. Madness Beverage is a retro first-person shooter throwback that aims to recreate the gameplay and experience of classic 90s and 2000s games like Quake and Doom. The game is much smaller in scope and size than the classics that spawned it, and Madness Beverage is clearly made by someone learning more about game development. I can't say I liked Madness Beverage really, but in the end I went from actively disliking it to thinking it was alright. The game does capture the experience of a certain era, and if you do want a first-person shooter on your Atari VCS, well, there really isn't any other option in the VCS store anyway, but you'll have a good time.
Boss, there is a galaxy-wide broadcast incoming.
Oh, put it on speaker, babe.
Have you ever feared death, infinite anguish, condemnation, and eternity in the kingdom of all evil? Well, fear no more.
What the fuck?
Madness Beverage wants to be rude and crude like its 90s counterparts, so expect lots of profanity and try-hard dialogue that repeats frequently, including the use of the word bitch.
Rest in pieces, bitch!
Moving is clunky and rudimentary, shooting is jerky, and the enemies don't really react. The graphics range from pretty bad and overly dark to pretty good and varied. And the music runs the spectrum from pretty decent to incredibly annoying, especially in the first stage of the game. When I first started Madness Beverage, I had a strong immediate dislike to it. Controlling the action was frustrating and poor, and the presentation was ugly, obnoxious, and repetitive.
What? You're not even gonna thank me, whoever you are. I have set you free from eternity in those hellish pits.
Cut the crap, Manos.
Madness Beverage does get better once the first level's done and you're set loose in a pretty big game with 4 other combat levels and a marketplace to engage with and complete. There are quite a few weapons to unlock. The game's strengths are its sometimes nice-looking environments and pretty accurate retro gameplay. Its weaknesses are in its cutscenes and combat. Madness Beverages are basically power potions you'll collect by completing levels. Each of them will do something different and be usable with the Y button. I didn't find myself using them particularly often, but they're likely more important as you get into tougher battles. One of the game's biggest flaws is poor default movement and aiming sensitivity. By default, the sensitivity is set so high the lack of aim assist made shooting accurately nearly impossible for me. And it wasn't until I turned sensitivity down as far as it could go that the game became playable and I got used to it. You can also play with the keyboard and mouse, and since this is a classic PC-style first-person shooter, you might prefer it. I liked mouse and keyboard too, but mostly used the modern controller for the video. The classic joystick is not supported. For video options, there's an even more pixelated version that tries to closely mimic 90s PC graphics. I didn't particularly like playing this way, but it seemed accurate enough. There's also a strangely compelling monochrome setting that looks pretty cool actually, and which brings out the landscape and enemy shapes more clearly while preserving color for blood and a few video elements. I really liked the monochrome presentation, but mostly stuck to the default color. Some of the planets with more outside areas in particular looked nice. The enemies mostly seemed to not have death animations, which meant I just shot them until they suddenly turned into piles on the ground. Rinse and repeat until a gate opened, continue. There's a pretty useful checkpointing system throughout each level. I've played plenty of first-person shooters back in the day, and I remember a time in maybe the early 2000s when it felt like almost everything was going to be a first-person shooter forever. So it's nice to see this kind of game get a release now that we're well into the era of third-person shooters and open-world combat. I got stuck frequently enough to ultimately move on to other games, but if you do get stuck, try looking for a button you didn't shoot, or keep killing enemies until a locked door or portal opens. Thanks for watching. I'll have more game reviews in the coming weeks as I work through the entirety of the VCS store library. I do these videos when I feel like I'm ready to present the game, so games like Madness Beverage can take a bit longer than others to make videos about. Liking helps spread the word about the channel, and subscribing gets these videos in your feed. Have fun!
Bring it on!